Previously on the Leaky Bucket podcast.
You talk to a lot of business owners and you're nodding, so I'm guessing you have the same experience. But you say, well, tell me about your business plan. And they go, look, the business plan is in my head. I go, great, okay, so tell me about your business plan. Well, I'm going to grow the business. Great, how? And then they just get stuck. So when it's not documented, it's not thought through. Grow your business is a concept. It's not a strategy, it's not a plan. It's just a concept.
Hi there, and welcome to the Leaky Bucket podcast. I'm your host, Ian Morgan, and this is the financial performance podcast for entrepreneurs looking to get a better understanding of their numbers, to plug the leaks in their business, and to move from surviving to thriving. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Leaky Bucket podcast. Today we have with us Dr. Vic, who is a business mindset coach, a certified pediatric chiropractor, a 3-times author, podcaster, and speaker. His latest book, Decoding The Matrix, which came out in May 2022 as well. He's helped hundreds of entrepreneurs learn how to create their dream life effortlessly through sharing principles of living in the quantum world, which we can explore that a little bit later. He shares many concepts that relate to spiritual truths, universal laws, quantum physics, neuroscience, limiting beliefs, leveraging one's mindset, reconditioning of the subconscious mind, and much more to achieve all of these concepts. Vic, welcome to the show.
Brother, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Fantastic. So first things first, Vic, let's give a bit of a chance for people to get to understand and know you. Obviously, I've listed quite a list of lots of things that you've got going on, but what, in your opinion, do you think you're most well known for?
Love that question. Yeah. The biggest thing I'd say that I'm really well known for are two things. One is the mindset side of things, understanding the mind, how it works, the psychology, but also the neurology of our brain, because being a chiropractor, that's what we do. We study neurology in the brain massively in depth. And I've taken that knowledge to look and see, how do we as humans react? How do we get conditioned? How's the subconscious mind work, limiting beliefs and all that? So there's that component. The second one that I get is that I'm also understanding the quantum world and how that all works. We used to call it the spiritual world and things like that, but that just sounds too woo-woo. And especially if you go into the business world, they're all like, what? Spirituality is going to help me with business? Yeah, okay, forget this guy's really doing some snake oil there or something. But it's understanding the quantum world, because the quantum is the indivisible world that creates the physical world. And if you can understand that, now you're understanding more of the rules of this game called life. And when you know the rules better, you become a better player in the game. And so those are like two big areas that I would say that I'm massive. I've been studying them for 15 plus years.
Brilliant. And what do you think people misjudge about you the most?
Misjudge. That's a good one. I have to think. I never get stumped on questions much, but that one I'm trying to think. That's something I need to become more aware of. What do people misjudge me by? I would say sometimes they think that what I'm sharing is something simple, and they think they can just grasp it because I make things so simple in ways. I'm very big into taking complex ideas and how can I simplify it so far down to that a 5th grader can understand this within, a short period of time to understand. And sometimes adults, when they hear it being that simple, like, hey, just focus on your vibe and focus on your consciousness level every day, and you'll attract the life that you want. Oh, that's it? That's easy? Great. Yeah, hold on. There's a whole plethora of stuff behind there that we have to recondition here to do that. Something like that. When it comes to that kind of thing.
Brilliant. I think, maybe we can delve into that a little bit later. But I think it's being successful, I think, in life ultimately surrounds about doing very simple things. But those simple things, they're not necessarily easy to do. They may be simple to necessarily understand at a high level, but to get into it and do it repeatedly and do it well is often not very easy. So it'd be good to delve into that.
Yeah, I'll also say too, now I'm thinking about it also, it's like you get this sometimes where people just, I've written 3 books and some people go, oh my God, how the heck did you write 3 books? I can't believe you did something like that. I'm like, what do you mean? It's easy to do. It's not that hard. It's just, or wow, you're like this, so blah, 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 blah. I'm human. Hold on, let's understand. I'm human too. I go through the same things. The stuff I teach my clients, I always tell them like, I still go through that. They're like, what do you mean you go through? You master this. I'm like, where have you ever thought? I go, if you have someone who says, I've mastered something, and they never have that issue ever again. I mean, maybe there's some exceptions to this rule, but like when it comes to like limiting beliefs, or if it comes to my healing journey or my spiritual journey or whatever it may be, I always tell them like I'm human. I go through this stuff. I get caught into the traps too. It happens. Like I'm human. I have a human side, and sometimes I let the fear get to me. But all I'll say is that those things will show up, but I've evolved with systems and stuff to get me out of it very quickly and learn how to assess it, to know where it's coming from, to create awareness so that I know how to address that and then handle it and then move forward, not let it consume me like it used to, or sometimes it'll consume me for a month, 2 months. Sometimes I had one time it happened almost a whole year. I was just in a state of like not thinking I'm worthy enough, or I had low self-worth. I didn't believe in myself. I mean, I believed in myself, but deep down, maybe not. Those kind of things that were there, and have to work through them. And every once in a while, those self-worth things will show up. They still do to this day. But it's one of those things where understanding how to navigate through that and handle that's the difference of where I'm at now compared to where I was back then.
And what do you do? How do you quickly snap yourself out of that? Because it's really easy to get stuck in that emotional sort of state, and to bring you back to maybe logical actions that you're going to take. How do you make sure you're doing that for yourself?
So it's real simple to do. I know, and you're going to hear me say simple a lot because really it's neurology. When you're stressed out, fear, and you're in that state, you're in this part of the brain called the reptilian brain, which is you're going back to being like a monkey in a sense, or a primate. And what ends up happening is in that state of mind, you're going to react to short-term solutions or whatever seems or sounds to a certain degree that is a solution, which usually puts you more in the hole than anything else. So why neurology is because when you can go ahead and balance your neurology and get it back to just center, getting out of that stress, flight, fawn, freeze response, what ends up happening is you're able to shut off that reptilian brain and start to access higher centers of the brain, which one of them is your prefrontal cortex. And that part of the brain is where you can start to, you're talking about being logical. With the prefrontal cortex, there's many things it does, but one of them is you can make a decision in future plan and see how it's going to act out. Where when you're in survival mode, you don't. You're only paying attention to the first 100, 200 feet of life, and that's it. Where the prefrontal cortex says, well, how about the first year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, 10 years down the road? How is this choice going to affect that, and does it align? And so what do? I'm not into, I can share 1,000 things that I do, but I'll share some most the simple things that you can do that can help. And it's probably more the easier way of doing things. So one of them is breath work. You have a part of your brain that monitors your respiration rate. How fast are you breathing? And the importance of that is, and how it plays a role in your nervous system is because if you slow down your breathing, that part of the brain is going to pick up on that, and then it influences your nervous system. That is what you can't control, your autonomic nervous system. We can't control it, but we can influence it. And so what ends up happening is now some people get caught up in, well, what type of breath work should I do? Doesn't matter. Does not matter. Research shows if you just take 6 deep breaths, that turns it off to a certain degree. I tell people do 10. But if you don't feel it then, do 15, do 20. It doesn't matter. The thing is, what I teach a lot of my clients and what I try to teach people a lot is, let's get out of the head, let's get to the body, right? What makes you feel calmer? What's going to get you to that state? Because just breath work alone, I practice 13 different types. Now, I don't practice them every single day, all of those. I'm practicing Wim Hof again. I'm back into the Wim Hof type breath work, which is very short, deep breathing, fast, 30 reps, and then you hold your breath for a certain period of time. And but that's just because of where I'm at in my life, and I feel that's what I need to be doing. That can change, and I can go into a slow pranayama breath, which is yoga type breath work. One of them, there's a gazillion of those, where I can just do slow breathing, only 2 respiratory rates, which means in and out, 2 of them in a minute, right? Get my breath to slow down. So it just depends on where I'm at. But breath work is one of the easiest things to do. Another thing you can do is just, especially if we're in the northern hemispheres, you got cold weather, you got some cold water, go jump in some cold water or take a cold shower. What's going to happen is the brain goes into survival mode in a different way, not in a survival mode like from the fear. And what ends up happening is it can't give energy to the fear anymore. It has to go into survival for the body. And so what it does is it turns it off. So once you get out of the cold, then all of a sudden the brain is not going to go back there. You can make it go back there, but the brain will not. And also you'll feel more refreshed, energized, because it's like if you've ever been in a real stressful situation or you had something that you were fearing like crazy, and then it came out to be not bad or it didn't end up not being negative at all, then all of a sudden you're like, oh my goodness, thank goodness. And you just feel this endorphins firing in and all that stuff. That's what the cold water does. So those are just two to really just center myself and then get me into my state to where I'm like, okay, let me address this from that state of mind rather than where I was before.
It's interesting, right, that I know actually you have some concepts around sort of spirituality and that side of things. But actually everything you sort of described is around scientific. How do you make that shift between the scientific and the spirituality? How do you sort of bring them together? And
I love this question. Yeah, it's so when I was in chiropractic school, I wanted to learn the depths of healing, and so I obviously school is it's sad to say this, but school really just teaches you to pass an exam, and so I felt that in the beginning of my going into school. So I was like, you know what, I need to go look elsewhere. So I went into energy healing, and I started to learn different modalities of how to heal with energy. And our bodies are made out of energy, and those who may go, oh, this guy's going woo woo. Well, you can call it your energy field, or you can call it a biophotonic field. The biophotonic field is the scientific term for the energy field around us in some way, shape, or form. So what ended up happening was when I started learning these things, I was trying to explain it to friends and so forth. And a lot of them like, that's woo-woo out there stuff. And I'm just like, man, how am I going to prove this to them? Because when I feel something, I know that I'm like, this is solid. But I can't, I'm like, my right brain gets it really, really well. But the left brain, I need to figure out some ways. And this is where I started to look at when I got into quantum physics and understanding consciousness and how consciousness plays a role in our life and all this. Quantum physics is really supporting what ancient truths and wisdom has been saying for 25, 3,000, 5,000 years. Stuff that we said from back then was like, oh, that's just, ancient wisdom. Now it's like, yeah, that ancient wisdom's right. Like they're dead on. Like how we are as a soul, how we are as an essence and a being, and how our mind plays a role. So that's where I started to try to connect dots, and I'm very good at picking up patterns. So I can see like, well, here's what quantum physics says. Well, guess what? What quantum physics says there's a part of the brain that does something like that too. Wow, there's two connections there. I like that. When I see patterns, then I know I'm on the right track. And so that's where I started to bridge that gap between science and spirituality. So that way I can speak the spiritual side of stuff, but at the same token, I can back it up with the science. And so that way, and one of those reasons why too is we live in a very left brain dominant life where a lot of people are looking at information. We're all head heavy, which means that we're just always downloading information and always doing this. We're not really connecting here. And so I knew that in order to teach these things in some way, shape, or form, and this was back when I was in chiropractic school and potentially going to be going and taking care of patients when I talk about energy and so forth, I had to have some other way of sharing that so that if I get that person who's like, I don't believe any of this stuff, okay, you don't have to. Like in chiropractic, we always say you don't have to believe that chiropractic works. It's just the same way of thinking that gravity doesn't exist either. It's a law. It's not that it's something that we think about. No, it's actual law. That's how the body, when how the nervous system works. There's laws to the body and working with that. The same thing with gravity. No matter what you do, I think there's going to come a time where we can levitate and do all these cool things and whatnot. I think science is supporting a lot of this. But one of the things is like, if I throw something off my house, it's falling. I don't know how to, help that thing lift it. No matter how many times I do it, it's going to fall. I can keep telling myself I don't believe it, but guess what? It's still going to do the same thing. And that's how quantum physics has come in to really understand that spookiness of, as I like to say, of the universe and life. But I really just call it the X factor. And that's kind of where the science side really started to develop for me to help with the explanations and to back up what I share from a spiritual perspective.
Vic, obviously you've got this history where you were a chiropractor, yeah, for many years first of all, and then you shifted, I believe, across into coaching and that sort of stuff. What was it that made you have that shift and move across completely?
Yeah, so the first 5 years of my career, well, actually, even before, when I was in chiropractic school, I hired a coach 6 months before I was going to come out of school. Um, and I took, I don't come from, I come from a very blue collar family. So I had all student loans and I was just like, I have a little excess money in student loans. I can cover myself for this much for coaching. I'm doing it because that's just how ambitious I was. But it was one of those things where when I came out, I was listening to all the self-help, personal development, all the business advice I can get my hands on, all the successful chiropractors I was trying to study from, listen to what they said. Anytime they talked, I read all their stuff, listened to everything. So I was just downloading, information. Knowledge is power. More knowledge, more money, all this stuff. So I was like, okay, that these guys are all millionaires and they're talking about it. I am going to learn everything I can from them. Well, what ended up happening was 5 years into my career, I hit my financial peak. Never thought I could make that much money. It was amazing. But when I got there, I remember my wife managed the office. So I looked at her. I remember when I got the notice from my accountant and she's like, yeah, or I had a call with her and she's like, yeah, great news. We didn't expect you to make this much money this year, but we'll have tax, blah, blah, blah. This is what it is. And I looked at my wife and I go, I should be so excited right now. And I'm not. Like, I'm unfulfilled. I'm not satisfied. And I thought, one of the things I started looking back was like, man, I'm burned out like every 4 to 6 months. Like really. And I go, that was puzzling for me. That was very disheartening because I don't do anything unless I'm passionate about it. Like I'm 100% all in. And I was just like, how am I burned out? That makes no sense. Passion generates energy. It should be infinite. And it just didn't make sense to me. So I started to look at my office. I looked at my wife and said, I don't know if I want to do this anymore because if I always feel like I'm running uphill, there's always a battle, there's always something, and it's like I don't care. You can tell just from my background, my biography, I have a very diverse background, so I love learning. So it's not about learning, and I have no problem with that. It was just the process of what we're told, and what I realized is it's all conditioning. It's just models, and I talk about this in one of my books, but it's this conditioning of here's what success looks like, here's this, and this is what you should do, and all these shoulds and so forth. So I got to a point in my career where I said, you know what? I'm going to stop doing everything I've been doing. I was reading 80 to 120 books a year, listening to podcasts, videos, workshops, you name it. And I said, you know what? Forget all that. If I'm truly the creator of my life, I really went back into my spiritual aspects of stuff. And I said, if I'm truly the creator of my life and how I see things is what it becomes and what I want to experience is what it is. And all I need to do is focus on my vibe and I can create effortless success. Then here's what I'm going to do. And so what my wife and I did is we changed the way our office was because it wasn't truly aligned to what really mattered to us. I had a coach who was kind of like, hey, serve people where they are. Don't serve them where you want them to be. And it's good business advice because it grew my business. But it was bad advice because I like to be very authentic and aligned to what I do. If this is what I want to have, this is what I want to create. And so I was like, why can't I have a practice like that? And so we decided to take a 40% hit purposefully on our practice. So what that meant is whoever didn't align with the new shift of our office, we would just let them know that we're going this route. They were very understanding. They actually appreciated more of our transparency with that and being honest with them. And they're like, wow, you don't do this for the money, then you do this for bigger purpose. I'm like, yeah, this is where I'm going. And so we let go, we referred out patients, 40% hit. Here's the magic. A year to year and a half later, we all of a sudden we're back at our financial peak and I was working 50% less than where I was before. And I didn't do anything new, anything different, nothing. I even had a pediatric office. When I first made the shift, I only had a 5% patient volume of pediatrics, which means age 0 to 17. If you took all my patients, 5% were peds at that range. In 6 months, we went to 48%, not doing a thing. And I like to be transparent. There was one workshop we did in that 6 month period. We only got 2 patients out of it. That did not change it up that much. It helped a little, very little, but it wasn't a huge shift. So what ended up happening was I looked at all this. I go, we didn't do anything new. We didn't do anything different. No new marketing strategies, no new nothing. All I did was focus on the quantum world, energy, and all these things. And it happened. And I never had to worry about my business again. I was never up working uphill. When COVID hit, we took a 40% hit the first month in the lockdowns in Chicago. And 3 months later, we were breaking records. So when I started to I knew I had the formula then. And so when I came to that point, I started looking at entrepreneurs and I just saw like them being in a way, they're just listening to whoever the gurus are downloading, and being a representation of their world instead of being a representation of their own world. And when I started to see that, and I started to see this whole entire program and system, I was like, entrepreneurs need to be broken out of this. And I was like, I know I can do it. So it wasn't for another year later until I got into the coaching realm, but it was more like a side hustle. I did that for a few years. And then this year, 2022, is when I went full time into coaching. My wife and I moved from out of state, and when we did that, we couldn't sell our office, so we decided just to let it go. And we ended up going into moving, and I was like, I'm going to do full time coaching here because I really want to take this to a whole new level. I love coaching. I love being a chiropractor, and but it was one of those things to help really transform entrepreneurs to truly understand how to live more fulfilled life, rather than not just being about money or growing a business, 10xing, all the fancy terms. And I'm not saying those things aren't important, but it's really what's more important to you, what matters to you. Like, if I look at my chiropractic business, there are chiropractors that are extremely more successful than I was. But I didn't care about that because I had a rule. Like, I said, man, it'd be really cool if I just made 1,000 an hour. I would love to make 1,000 an hour. That just became a goal of mine because I knew how much I would profit per hour with that. And profits is what mattered most to me. And I was like, if I can just get to that level, I have success. I don't need to make more. Like, I'm good with that. And that's something I have a lot of dialogues with people about, like, what's the number that you'd be like, I'm satisfied with? Because we're always looking for more. And that's more of a Western mindset, because Eastern are like, be satisfied with where you are. Not saying you don't grow, but just say, what's the number that, like, I can enjoy this, and then I can just expand if it does from there. But it's not my goal. It's not my purpose to do that.
Vic, I think you led into a couple of nice key areas here that have got, you said about sort of success and what you're looking for, and it's not just monetary. First of all, what are the 3 values or main values that you live your life by?
The first one's myself and everything about me. It's my health, it's my mind, it's things that that me as an individual and taking care of me is the highest value about anything. Now, some people say that's selfish, but you can't give a cup of anything if it's empty. If I have no coffee in my cup, how can I give you any? So taking care of me, holding my values to that, in that part of it. Second is family. Everything is my everything of who I am is my family. It is every aspect of who I am. It's the fabric to who I am. That is the most important thing. I don't care about anything else when it comes to that. And then the third part, that I value the most is going to be then constantly. Well, I guess that's the first part, because it's evolving and growing, and that's all part of me. The third part is just, being able to have a vehicle of some sort to express to the world, to make a change, to make a shift. These are things that I'm always constantly learning and growing and expanding, using myself as an example, but then also trying to expand out as much as I can, because it's one of those things where, these are 3 things that are the biggest thing in my life that, if those things weren't solid, then forget it. I'm done. There's no point in me being here.
And then Vic, you also alluded to chasing financial success, right? And then realized that wasn't maybe the success that you were looking for. So what does success actually look like for you? And are you currently being successful?
I love this question. So success to me is fulfillment. Fulfillment in what's fulfillment? Well, to me, it's choosing what I want to experience and experiencing that, making that happen, right? So you can take that in any aspect of life. That's relationships. So when I look at success, it's not just from a monetary standpoint or a business standpoint. That's actually on the lowest part of my value, or what's important, or what's my focus. Success is coming to, how's my mind? Success is coming to, how's my relationships, not just with my wife and my kids, but also every aspect of my friends and so forth. How deep and how real and how true are they? How well is my physical health, because that's important to me in those aspects. And then, of course, the vehicle aspect of passion and doing what I love to do. These are things I take a lot of my clients through when I work with them, because I'm like, I'm going to work for things from a holistic standpoint. This is where my chiropractic background comes in, because chiropractors, we look at the whole, we don't look at the parts. We look at the whole entire system, and we want to support the whole system to be at that certain level. Same thing, my coaching. A lot of times people want to come in, they're like, I want to double profits. I want to 10x. I want to do this. Okay, let's work on your mind. Let's work on your relationships. Let's work on, your health, physical movement and stuff like that. And let's work on your mission, which is the things you want to share with the world. That's your gifts. If we get those right, money comes. And they're always like, this is so unorthodox. I'm like, yeah, but these are the generators if you want to understand the quantum world. So choosing that process, I truly believe that fulfillment side is what really is how I define my success. And am I successful? Absolutely. I mean, but there's always stuff I'm trying to grow and expand. I have a huge vision for the world I want to do. And so, but at the time of where I'm at, yeah, I would say I'm very successful in what I've done. I've chosen what I wanted to do. I made a huge career shift, and yet it has netted me to work out very well. And I'm very blessed for that. But it's just it just works. It's one of the things where it's a different approach, but at the same time, it creates deep core changes. I mean, I have clients this year alone has been very interesting. Just to share kind of an example of what I mean by like fulfillment aspects. I've had about 30 to 40% of my clients this year alone shift careers. Now, I'm not saying they work for somebody and they're changing another job. No, they're changing businesses because they realized that the business they have was not what they really wanted. They were conditioned in a certain realm and they wanted something deeper. They wanted to have a more, they knew deep down, but it was one of those things like the mind says, yeah, but look at what we're doing here. Look at the life you have. This is really great. And I know that feeling because a lot of people back home were like, you've made such a huge impact in the community. You're the go-to guy for when it comes to health in your community, and you've built such a great business. Why would you leave all that to not start all over again? But we did take a good hit financially because I would my primary was my chiropractic office, and it's like you're going to start this all over. Why would you do something like that? And it was because I'm like, well, if I could just take my office and my patients and take it out of the state and go to the other state that we live in, I would have done that. But I couldn't. So I was like, it fulfills me in deeper ways to be able to serve people, change their mind. Because if we can work there and I can create awareness the way I want to help my clients get there, then they'll never go back. It's a true transformation, like a caterpillar going to a butterfly.
But during what you were saying there, right, you mentioned about mindset. And to give a little bit of, I suppose, background to what we do is that there's a similarity in terms of people come to us wanting to achieve financial freedom. And the very first thing we do is go, well, before you can even get anywhere near to financial freedom, you need financial control. But alongside getting financial control, we need to look at your mindset and what you're doing, because in my experience, myself, and also with lots of people we've worked with and go on to work with, it's often the case that your mind is your limiting factor in terms of that you're probably unknowingly lying to yourself that you're being successful, you've hit limits and there's no way past it. So people come to us for a financial element, and actually we start with mindset first of all to get that right and get moving. Clearly mindset's important to you and to your coaching methodologies. What's some key concepts, I suppose, around the mindset that you use?
So let's define mindset, right? Because some people, that term is being used so loosely in so many aspects, and everyone's like, again, what do we do with the left brain? We make things more complex. We go into all these different arenas, blah blah blah. And I'm not saying these things aren't correct, but let's break it down to the most simplest thing. Mindset is like having a pair of glasses that are blue. When you wear them, all you see is blue. You're not going to see red. You don't see green. You don't see any other color except blue. Same thing happens if they're green or if they're red or so forth. I had one time, actually, I was interviewing somebody and I was talking about this, and they were like, mindset's like polarized glasses. And I was like, okay, I'm like, yeah, they go shady, this and that. And they're like, no, the interesting thing is when you wear polarized glasses, you can't see reflections off water or stuff like that. They don't show up. And I was like, oh, I never knew that about them. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, that's mindset. Because it's the same thing with the color ones, but for some people who wear polarized glasses, they can understand this. The glares are there. But because your mindset is where it is, you miss it all. All you see is the opposite of that. It's the same thing with the colors. All you're going to see is blue. You don't see any other color. Does every other color exist? Absolutely it does. But the problem is the mind, because of the lens you're wearing, that is the only thing that it is there. So that's one aspect of mindset and how I approach things. But the other aspect of mindset is you're talking about ceilings, right? We all have a ceiling, a psychological barrier, these different kind of concepts. What really is that though is a limiting belief that it's coming up to the surface, right? So limiting beliefs, your subconscious mind, how it's been programmed, how does the subconscious mind work? How can you utilize it to your advantage, and how can you reprogram it? Because you can. And then it's, how do you reframe one's mindset? And reframing is, I call it a spiritual alchemist. So here's the spirituality side, right? Spiritual alchemist. What does that mean? You can know meaning. Life has no meaning except the meaning you put on it, right? This is old ancient wisdom stuff. And it's very true. Quantum physics shows this, neuroscience shows this. But what does that all mean? Well, if anything happens to you, an event's an event, right? Whatever shows up in your life, it's just that. It's nothing else, right? Someone goes bankrupt and they go, "Oh my God, this did this." No, like I went bankrupt one time. So, and I had all these emotions tied to it. And then when I realized what caused it, and then I looked at, well, why did I was like, that wasn't a bad thing. It wasn't a good thing. It was just this. And when you can reframe the energy, what does that mean is you can put the charge of what matters. Charge is a positive or negative. So you can make that and look at it and say, well, this is what it's going to mean for me, or it's not going to mean that for me. And that's going to dictate the meaning because you chose that. Life has no meaning except what you give it power to. And so just understanding those components, that is the game changer. A lot of stuff what I do. Like this is why I've had more clients this year break records who've been in business not 1 year or 2 years. We're talking 15, 20, 25 years, breaking records finally that they've been wanting to do for so long. And we didn't do anything except focus on their vibes. But more importantly, too, that came up through conversation is limiting beliefs. And once you remove those limiting beliefs, then all of a sudden, there's nothing holding you back. Because the limiting belief is just that. It limits you. It holds you back in some way, shape, or form. And we have limiting beliefs in every facet of life. I know for myself, when I was going through this journey, when I went bankrupt and all that, the reason why I was so grateful for it is because it actually showed me. I remember I was like, what are limiting beliefs in the financial realm, right? How many are there? And I found a nice condensed list of 10. I was like, okay, these are pretty powerful 10. Then I read them all. I go, son of a gun, this explains everything. I had 9 out of 10. I had 9 limiting beliefs about money. Now, how did I discover that? It didn't happen overnight. I just didn't read the list and go, oh yeah, I have 9 of those. I got this. They're limiting. Sometimes they're in the subconscious. But I started to look at my life and use that as a feedback system to actually give me that information. And that's one thing about mindset too, is life is always, it's just a feedback system. And you can use that to know where you're focusing, where's your mindset at. Where's your mind at? Your mind at in general. Because wherever your mind goes, wherever your focus goes, is where energy goes. And wherever that goes, that's where manifestation happens. And so it's one of those things where if you're really aware of how this system works, man, you can start to step back your power and you can really start to take over your life and be that master of it in more ways than you can ever imagine.
Interesting. So Vic, do you believe then that any one of us, if we get our mindset right and we understand our own personal limiting beliefs, do you believe then that there are no limits to what we can achieve?
There are not no limits, but there is a spiritual side that may take it really far down the rabbit hole. I won't go into that, but from just the science and the neurology and quantum physics and all that stuff, yes, there is no limits because, and we're starting to see that more and more. We're starting to realize that from neuroscience itself, there's, here's an example. Here's how the brain, from, this is some ancient wisdom they used to talk about, like, if you can see it in your mind, and if you can create it in your mind, you can create it in your world, right? Old stuff. There's many, I'm paraphrasing, but there's a lot of different scriptures and stuff that talk about this. Well, quantum physics shown that to be true. Neuroscience says that that's also true because how you see something is what it's going to become. Where you focus is how it's going to grow. So if the only limits are you, if you can't imagine, you can't see it in your mind clearly, then you're not going to create it. That's your limit. It's just your lack of creativity or your lack of imagination. And we don't have a lack of imagination. We just been conditioned or we've been stressed for so long or both to where it limits us. I have people come to me sometimes. They're like, I can't be, I don't know how to be creative anymore. I'm like, you know how to be creative. You just forgot. And they're like, well, yeah, but I don't have a zest for creativity. I said, you're called, that's just burnout. And once we get rid of the burnout and understand why it's happening, then all of a sudden your creativity comes back. And then when your creativity comes back, then your imagination will start to come back. And when that starts to happen, then all of a sudden you can remove the barriers and limits. So really, it comes down to, um, it all comes down to the perception of what can you see in your mind's eye, and that's really going to be your limit. If you can't see it, it's not going to happen. But if you can see it, it will happen, or at least the potential's there to make it happen.
But Vic, as you know, right, it's the Leaky Bucket podcast, right? And for clarity, the leaky bucket, the way we see it, is it's all those small issues that actually, if you don't stop and you give them enough attention, they soon become big issues. And maybe they won't stop you necessarily being successful, but they'll certainly stop you staying successful if you don't address them. What do you do to ensure that you spot those small issues and reduce any risks of you getting blindsided by them?
I love the name of your podcast because I was telling you before we hopped on, chiropractors love this kind of principle because it's so easy for people to understand. Like, you have holes in your bucket. There's some that we can't get rid of. It's just part of life. But from a health perspective, but it's not about trying, sometimes we can't plug those up, but what we can do is add more water. So how do we add more water to keep the bucket full as much as we can? That analogy I take into business and life, where it's like, there's certain things that, I may not be able to, I don't want to say fill up because there's some things you can do. We can change things, right? There's no limits to stuff. But sometimes if there's some weaknesses I have, I'll source them. Some people say, well, you should strengthen your weaknesses. No, I'm going to work on my strengths. Those are my strong suits. I'm going to work on that level. If I can, I'll delegate it out. That way they can take care of it. It's kind of like plugging the hole up. But then there comes the point of, how do I fill my bucket up every single day? And again, the way I teach things and what I do is, how do I get my vibration or my vibe, my conscious level, my mood, my energy to be as high as possible? How do I set my intention, in other words, for the day to say, this is why? It's kind of like, I'll simplify it in ways. It's kind of like just remembering your why of what you do and always remembering that, never forget. And always going back to that memory of like, okay, this is why I do what I do. This is why, I look at my future. This is why I want to become that person, right? This is why I'm striving to become that person. And I'm not striving, again, I want to be really clear. I'm not striving for money. I'm not striving for material wealth or material possessions and all that. I'm striving for a feeling of who that person's being. That's what I'm working towards, right? That's the really element. That's the magic sauce there. Because when you can really focus on that, everything else will come. And that's the thing I try to teach a lot of people. So when it comes to that process, but that's how so filling up the holes, that's where I delegate a lot of that stuff. Sometimes I'll work on my own weaknesses if it's something that I'm interested in learning or want to get better at. Some things I'm just like, yeah, no, I have no interest in doing that. And there's no fun for me in doing that. I'm just going to, whatever that may be. And sometimes in life I can't, if you can't, then it's just, there's mindset tricks you can do to take a low value something that you don't enjoy and you can tie it to something that's higher. Like me doing this work here allows me to have more opportunity to do this. Well, I love doing that. So you know what? I'll do this because I know it opens the door for that. Kind of those kind of things.
Vic, if you're obviously all the stuff that you've got in place, obviously you've got all your techniques and everything that you're using, that you've redirected your business to what you want to be doing. And I think it's very easy for other people to look at it and go, oh, yeah, but Vic, you're leading this great successful life. You've got everything in order and it's fantastic. However, the reality of it is that you've probably got your own challenges and leaks that you're fixing. Give me a little bit of a taster and give the audience maybe a bit of a taster of what are you trying to fix right now that you don't quite know the answer to yet.
Yeah, I love you bringing this up because I always tell people, if anyone ever says they have things figured out, run away. Don't pay attention to them. I have nothing. The older I get, the less I have things figured out. And this may sound weird, but I was told this in chiropractic. Like they were saying, like the more you get into chiropractic, the less you're going to actually know. And I was like, how the heck does that happen? Here's a student. I'm learning so much stuff because I'm reading so many things and all this other stuff. And I'm like, that makes no sense. I should be like an extreme expert in 10 years. No, they're right. The older I get, the less I know. And the reason why is because I always tell people, I don't have life figured out. And they're like, wait a minute, you're a business coach, you help with life, and you're telling me you don't have life figured out. I don't. I have a slight understanding of life that makes it dangerous enough to be a better player in the game, but I don't have it figured out. Here's why. So here's a little neuroscience to back that up. My left brain, our left brain, can only process bits of information 7 plus or minus 2. That's it per given second. It's not a lot of information. It's very small and minute, right? Your right brain processes over 1 million, some people say 2 million bits of information every second. That's a vastly a lot more information, right? When we think about it. So that's one part. The second part is they've looked at how much your brain can actually contain information at a certain point, how out of all the knowledge that's out there to what you can contain. And this really humbled me because I was like, okay, I don't know nothing. The reason why I say that is because actually what they found out through research is that you only know 0.000001 something percent of what exists in the whole entire world of knowledge. So right there, that's that. The thing I'm working on right now that I'm really challenging myself to do, I'm really stretching myself far, is how far can I take effortless? How far? I want to work 6 hours a week. That's what I'm working towards right now. And there are challenges coming up with that and stuff that I have to remodify and so forth, and I'm learning as I go. But I'm from an energetic standpoint, I'm trying to figure out in a way, not figure out, allow to happen, and the things will come when I'm ready, but to create that effortlessness where I am just having to, and I've done this in my chiropractic office. This is just a whole new realm. Like working in a local brick and mortar office where you know how to connect with the local community. I've done it and I know how to do that. I help a lot of chiros do that. Now I'm on an online perspective where it's a whole vast community globally. And there's different rules to this game. And I'm like, I'm still going to do the effortless thing. I'm just going to figure out I got to hack the code on this and business people are like, oh, you just got to do automation. You got to do this, do that. No. That's not where I'm going. I'm going to how I ran my office and just doing that element. So really focusing on how to really take effortless to a whole nother level, kind of like what I've done in my chiropractic office in that realm. And that's something that I've been really trying to work on because when you do this kind of work, you have to let go. There's no control. You let go, you let yourself go into the uncertainty realm. You have to trust in yourself so much to know and understand that the principles of this quantum world and universal laws and all that, this is really true. And so if I focus on my vibe, everything else is going to align itself. I'll have inspired action when it comes. The law of inspired action states that when you're ready to take action on something, you're going to feel inspired. You can't ignore it. And that's what effortless action is. And then all of a sudden, effortless success just happens to follow that. And so I'm really stretching myself in that realm to do it. And it's been fun. I will tell you, there's things that come up. There's definitely limiting beliefs. My mind will come in at times. I'm a type A driver personality guy. So sometimes I'll get caught in a trap where I'm like, I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to do this. And all of a sudden I'm like, why? Why am I doing this? Hold up. Let me take a step back. Do I really need to do this right now? Is this really going to help like me just doing busy work? Or I mean, it's not busy work. It's being productive. I'm getting things done. But it's like, is that really the best use of my time right now? Or where do I feel like I need to focus more on? And I let myself be guided that way. And this is something I really went headfirst in middle of this year, midsummer. And it's been one heck of a scary journey, I'll tell you that, because it's like you just let go. But at the same token, it's been the more I let go, the more success I see, which is interesting. And I know this. Here's the thing. I know this because I did this in my chiropractic office. But here is again coming on a new realm. Old stuff comes back up, and you're like, hold up, why are you coming back up? Why is that showing up? I thought I healed all that and I cleared through it. But it's just helping myself go to a deeper level to master this even more. And so that way I can also help my clients even at a deeper level to do just those things and so much more.
So Vic, if you've got this sort of effortless sort of approach that you're taking at the moment, have you got some kind of favorite productivity hacks or anything that you do to make that a reality?
Well, there's two different ones, right? So you have what you're talking about is more business kind of concepts, right? Like how do you work less by work smarter, not harder, kind of things. Yeah. Like if I do this, if I do this thing, how can I multiply my time while focusing on one thing? It takes care of a few other things. So there's that avenue. The effortless part is more of when I speak effortless, I'm speaking on the realm of we're so much caught up of what's our next step, what's the things I have to do to get to this step A, B, C, D, whatever, the logical process. And effortless just means that you don't have to figure any of that out. The law of inspired action will come because here's the thing. We'll go the scientific route first. Quantum physics has proven that everything in the universe is energy. Everything's energy. Our body is 99.9% energy. So if you want to understand how much mass we really are, like I'm hitting my arm, there's mass, right? You say, no, this is not energy, this is not space, there's mass there. They've looked at it all, and if you take your body, it's the size of a penny on an American football field. So if you're in Europe, soccer fields I think are a little wider, if I'm not mistaken, but it's almost like a penny on a soccer field. And so it's one of those things. There's not a lot of mass here, so it's mainly energy. So that's one thing. We can change the term energy to vibration, frequency, conscious level. There's multiple terms to this, but the way I can explain it is there's a law of vibration. The law of vibration states that you only experience in your life what you're vibrating at. So you can't experience anything above it or below it. It's only there. So when you look at this kind of principle and this concept, then you're like, okay, well, what's vibration? Well, vibration or consciousness level is your thoughts and emotions and what you're focusing on. Okay. Sometimes your focus can lead to the thoughts and then lead to the emotion. Sometimes this could be thoughts, emotions that lead to your focus. I usually combine all three. And the reason why that works, let's go back to the science again. Thoughts are electrical. We know that they're electrical impulses. And then we know emotions are magnetic in some way. I call them a generator, and they create basically the charge to pull stronger that is, the deeper the higher the emotion or the lower that emotion is, you're going to get the spectrum of that. When you put that together, that's electromagnetic force. And when you have electromagnetic force, that's going to, now you're playing with magnets and energy, all these kind of things. So it creates attraction, and then you create that in your physical realm. So when we look at that, the work I teach my clients is how to step into the state in the electromagnetic field to raise it as high as they possibly can. Well, how do you know it's high? You got to go to your emotions and how your body feels. Because that, and I don't mean feel like aches and pains. I mean feeling like, wow, I feel really lighter. I feel good. My heart's open. I can feel, that's the feeling side I'm talking about. And when you do that, and you do that repetitively enough, there's going to come a point where then all of a sudden, when you get that vibration and you hold it, now it becomes part of you. You've held it. All of a sudden, now the people, the circumstances, the situations, and so forth are going to be attracted into your life, or you're going to be inspired to take action, right? That's the law of inspired action. It's going to come. And when that does, when you take action, you do so much work in such a short period of time. It is crazy. I've written my last, like, for example, all my books I followed. When I wrote books, I didn't think about writing a book. I want to write books. I want to write 30 books in my life. That's my left brain saying 30 books. Why? I have no clue. I just want to share as much as I can. But when it comes to the books and when it's time, it's all law of inspired action. I mean, my last book, I was moving out of state. Here's just to give you an example. I was moving out of state. I was closing down a business, and my wife was pregnant. Okay. And I had this thing about a book. My mind kept going to, it's time to write a book. It's book. And I'm like, why am I focusing on a book? I don't want to, I have no time to write a book right now. But I know how my body works. I can't stop thinking about something, and then I get anxious. I used to be anxious in my earlier days. And I'm like, why am I anxious? Okay, hold on. If I can't ignore the thought, and I'm anxious. That means there's something, this is inspired action. It's going to keep bothering me until I do it. And if I don't pay attention to it, something will happen in my life that will make me have time now to do it. Does that kind of make sense? That's the power of this stuff. And so I'm like, okay, maybe I need a time. Okay, if I need to write a book, let me work on my cover first, and let's see what happens there. If I can get the cover to look somewhat of what I want, then I will say it's time to write a book. So I send it to my cover guy, and all of a sudden he responds back 2 weeks later, and I go, wow, that's like 95% where I want it. Okay, cool. I'll be writing a book. Then the feeling went away. I didn't have the feeling anymore. So it's okay. I'm about to make the move. I'm closing the office. Totally went away. Beginning of February this year, the feeling came back. And I looked at my wife. I said, time to write the book. And I wrote the book. Here's the power of this kind of stuff. I wrote the book not in one day. It was 22 and a half hours of writing. That's all it was. And I don't mean writing, I was typing. But and the book was done, and that was it. I sent it off to my editor immediately after. She sent it back to me 2 weeks later. We had it ready to go, and it was done. Like, there wasn't any hiccups along the way, and that's the power of a law-inspired action. So when I'm talking about effortless success, what it is that when you allow to set the vibe, that's all your job is, just to set the vibe every single day. Things are going to come to you. When they come to you, you're going to have inspired action. You're going to have to take action, but you're going to feel pulled to it. This is what I call effortless, because you're not thinking. right? Did I think about the book? Did I have to think about the process? And I'm just talking about my book. My business is like that. My coaching business starting was like that. My chiropractic business was starting like that. There's a lot of things that I allow this to pull me towards or do or focus on, even books and all these things. And when I need to read something, I don't go seeking, it comes to me. And what ends up happening is that I start to realize that doing this kind of process, it's effortless actions. And then all of a sudden, effortless success is going to follow from that. And so this is the kind of process of what I mean effortlessly. But productivity hacks and so forth, I'm very neuro and very mindset based. So I work with a lot of my clients to understand first what's their chronotype, right? Chronotype is, I don't know if you guys have heard it before. It's, I think there's some good research into this stuff about understanding what kind of person are you and how do you work and how do you function. I think that's critical. You need to know those things. Like I don't like working out in the morning. I would love to work out in the morning. But it just I can't get into it as well as I could in the afternoon. And when I done my chronotype, it makes sense. Wow, yeah, physical activity, 11 to 1 is perfect for me. But so it's understanding where are some of your higher peak states that you can do, because that's when you're going to do a lot more work in a shorter period of time. Some people call this time management. I call it energy management, because when you can focus all your energy into one thing, you're going to get a lot more things done in a shorter period of time. There are automation stuff we can go into and all this other stuff that I teach and stuff, but I think these are I like to get into those things first, because those are like the core principles to really elevate your creativity and your peak states and so forth. Because when you're at that level, when it comes to doing work, then you get so much done in a shorter period of time. Then you're like, wow, that was it. I mean, I like doing reels on social media or something. I hammer those out in a day. I edit them another day when it comes to it, and I have a whole month full of stuff to be done, and I don't have to work on those anymore. Because some people ask, how are you posting something almost every day? Well, there's your answer. That's how I do it.
But I think I've got an intriguing area I think I want to go to, certainly for me and hopefully for listeners too. That obviously you said early on I think it was as you were finished or just about to start your career properly, that actually you read or consumed lots of books, self-help books, business books, and so on. And actually what you realized you were possibly doing was trying to build your life to be some form of replica or of these various books. So given all of that, and lots of people are doing that and reading, listening, and doing whatever to shape their lives, if you were going to recommend one particular book, not including your own, right? That's not. If you're going to recommend one particular book, what would it be and why?
If I had to only give one, and it wasn't my books, there's a book, I call it my Bible. It's not going to be the type of business book you're looking for, because this is a book that's very spiritual based. It's called Conversations with God by Don O'Neill Walsh. And it's a book, I think I have it somewhere up there, yep, right there. And it's one of those things that this book is the questions we ask about life. And it goes deep. There's some stuff that you're going to be going, well, that's really far out there. But then there's some stuff that is like deep. There's some deep spiritual truth built into this book. And I love the way it was written in the conversation. But the reason why I recommend that book, and it's my number one book, is because it gave me a lot of answers to what I was seeking. It also reinforced a lot of things I felt. And it helped me understand this game called life a little better and see life in a different way than what we get so consumed by. Because we have the human mind, we have the human element of us, and then we have the spiritual element. And a lot of times we get so stuck in the human element that we forget we really are spiritual beings having a human being experience. And in the spiritual realms, it's all fun, light, and airy. But in life, we make it so heavy. And it's not that you want to enjoy the human side, but you want to also tap into that spiritual side and connect it to. I mean, I love the book so much. My wife and I did our wedding vows with it. He shared them in there, and I'm like, hun, what do you think? I had to read them. She's like, that is us. I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, we're going to change up a few things, but that literally is how we see things. And so that's the book I would recommend. That is, I'm all about how deep can we go in life? How deep and more purposeful can we be? And I don't mean that from a business standpoint or money or that. I mean it from something that is, I don't even know how to explain, because language can't explain it. But it's a feeling. You can feel it. And we all have that feeling in us. We all know that feeling. And this book really just reinforced how I saw life. And it was like that little bit of like, okay, I'm on the right path. This is kind of how I see life to be. I'm not saying I'm 100% with that, but it's just, I had my own thoughts, right? I take something and I go, okay, how can I make that mine? Because as you're sharing 80 to 120 books a year, I was living in other people's worlds, and I wanted to live in my world. And I think that's a spiritual perspective. That's fulfillment in another world. So is living in your world and creating it the how you want to create and experience your life and what that means to you.
Great. I like the fact that you've gone. I've never heard of the book, never heard anybody mention it, but that's exactly what I love about that. And I thought I was going to get an answer that was going to be something a bit out there and a bit different in compared to what the stock answers normally are, which is purposely why I asked the question. So yeah, no, brilliant. Thank you.
I try to stand out as much as I can. Just kidding.
Vic, I think obviously you've got an alternative approach to sort of coaching and that sort of stuff, but I'm interested to go, actually, have you ever had an outcome from somebody you've coached that you just completely didn't expect? You just didn't see coming.
All the time. That's the beauty of what I do. Because when you get into these elements that I'm talking about, like spirituality, and I bring the quantum physics and so forth. Like I always tell people that, again, when you step it, the hardest thing about being a business owner and entrepreneurs is that we get so stuck in our mind of what we want to create that we don't leave the door open for all the other possibilities. And I always say you have to allow and surrender. You have to detach from what you want to have. Like there's a whole process I take people through vision and stuff and how to create what you want to have. But then you got to let that go. Because if you keep your mind focused and attached to that, you're never going to get it. Like how can you let the dream evolve and grow and expand? But the cool part of this is when you really focus on vibe, you're opening the door to endless possibilities. And it's so crazy how things come up. Now, some of them are just like, I have one client that all of a sudden broke records this year because something happened with someone in the community and it ended up benefiting him, but it came out of nowhere. And I said, isn't that cool? Well, yeah, but now I have to, how do I maintain? And I'm like, stop, that's in your head. Get out of there. I don't want those questions. Like, let's focus on just the vibe because you created this, right? And what it does is it just opens the door to endless possibilities, and you're allowing that to happen for you. And the thing is, we just have to let go of what shows up. We get so consumed that I can't tell how many times I work with people like, well, this happened to me, and but then it's like, yeah, but that was not how I was expecting. I'm like, but didn't you get your goal? You broke through your goal. And they're like, yeah, but I'm like, what? Yeah, but I go, then that's ego. Like, let go, because we want to think we create success. Right? We want to think that it's me all day long, and you forget that you're co-creating with the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. And it's just so fascinating how things just show up out of nowhere for people to see that stuff. I mean, sometimes I had one client all of a sudden, a dream, she's an entrepreneur, but all of a sudden someone called and she got this amazing job that lines with what she wants. I'm like, you really want to have a job? She goes, listen, I don't want a job, but this really fulfills me in many ways. It checks the box. I can still do other stuff with what I want to do, but this is like not something I don't want to do. Like this is actually inspiring. Came out of left field. I was like, hey, I did not see that coming, but hey, you know what though? If it's fulfilling, then go with it. Because that's what I always teach my clients. Do not judge it. If it feels right, and we work through a process to really understand that. When it does, don't judge it. Even if I'm looking at it going, you know what? But if you feel that way and it's totally congruent with that, then there's some parameters I have, questions, and how to make sure it's really really something there. And then once we clear that, then it's like, yeah, move forward. So there's always stuff. I mean, I could share a lot of stories, but most of the time, it's not like, I would say it's very rare in my experience where we map stuff out and it happens exactly that way. It's very rare. Because in my work, it's in quantum, right? So quantum, I wouldn't say it's random, but it's a lot of potentialities that are just mind-boggling, and I don't try to figure that stuff out. That's way beyond my pay grade. I know that I know the basics and the simplicity of things, and I know that if we just do that, it allows for all the other stuff to come in, and it's crazy. I've seen it in my life multiple times, more than 8 to 10 times in my career, just from chiropractic, of bizarre things that you're like, how the heck this happened? Nope, don't question it. That's judging. That's resistance, but just allowing. Yeah.
Brilliant. Vic, it's been great having you on and sort of going into I think what most people would probably describe as alternative views in terms of how growth in terms of us as a person and growth in terms of business can work. been eye-opening from my point of view. Not thought and viewed things in that sort of fashion. So it's been really, really good. Where can people find out more about you and your methods and your coaching and what you do?
Yeah, my website's my hub, empoweryourreality.com. You can find everything there. If what I said resonated with you and you're like, man, I would love to learn more and potentially work with me, I do a free breakthrough call where you can hop on 30 minutes and I get to learn all about your world. It's really more of me just qualifying to make sure you're the right fit. I have a very specific, I only allow a certain type of amount of clients. I have free resources on my website too. I have a podcast. You can find it there. I also have a free ebook on the power of visualization, talking about how powerful our mind really is. And then social media wise, I'm in the bottom left corner of my website. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Reach out, ask questions if you have any questions. I love hearing from people and so much more.
Fantastic. Thanks, Vic. And then we have a bit of a sort of tradition on this podcast with a bit of a quirky final question. And I'm not quite sure where this might go with you, actually. But if you needed to start, or if you had to start a new business tomorrow, and it's completely unrelated to what you currently do and your experience so far, what would you start and why?
Visualize myself in that aspect and see who is that person I want to be. And if I can't create it in my mind, go see people who do it first and learn from, pick pieces from there so I can get the vision right in my mind first. Because if you can't visualize it in your mind, you don't have clarity with it, you're not going to be able to create it.
Brilliant. Clear, concise, and straight to the point. Like it. Again, thanks, Vic, so much for being on. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, brother, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate the questions and your time.
Cheers. Thank you.
So I sold out a lifetime deal for my membership in November on my birthday. And so when I did that, I was like, oh my God, I put this offer together today. And, 48 hours later, I'd sold it out. And so I made sure I had a drink to myself on that evening, to celebrate it, because otherwise it just goes. And then I'm like, oh, that was cool. We did that thing, it worked. And then let's move on to the next thing. And actually, I think that's part of the problem of this kind of business is not stopping